All right, what's going on, Dolphins fans? Jacob here, Miami Dolphins Syndicate. There's been a lot of talk recently in terms of roster moves that the Miami Dolphins are going to either have to make or potentially could make in this upcoming run of free agency, whether it be signing and trading guys, whether it be keeping guys on the team, whether it be letting guys walk. There are some guys that are coming towards the end of their rookie deals. We've already talked about Christian Wilkins. There's some other guys like Andrew Van Ginkel and Robert Hunt that we're going to be talking about and what their future looks like for the Miami Dolphins on the team, off the team. But one of the biggest guys when it comes to these trade talks, and we've heard some trade talks going back to last offseason, is Jaylen Waddle. And Jaylen Waddle this year, he was probably a little disappointed in his form with the injuries that he just kept continually sustaining. Never really got to put together a really hot stretch last season, as well as how the team utilized Tyreek Hill. Tyreek being the best wide receiver in the league last year, fell just short of Offensive Player of the Year. So naturally, that brings us to this offseason where there was already discussions last year about moving Waddle for Jonathan Taylor. The Miami Dolphins obviously did not want to do that, and now we're just getting 1 year closer to having to sign Jaylen Waddle to an extension, and the wide receiver market is not getting any easier for teams. We're seeing bigger and bigger contracts, and with Tyreek Hill being the highest paid wide receiver on the team, you would think Jaylen Waddle is probably going to want to get close to that, if not more than that, whenever he is finally due to get his contract extension. So we have some news today from Chris Grier, obviously Miami Dolphins GM, and he's done a pretty good job as a Dolphins GM. We've seen him make that trade for Tyreek Hill. He drafted Jaylen Waddle. He drafted Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips, Tua. We've seen him do a lot of good moves. There's been some bad, but I'd say overall, Chris Grier has been a good GM for the Miami Dolphins. And today, he spoke to the media. He talked about Christian Wilkins a little bit, talking about how all options are on the table, talked about a franchise tag for him, talked about potentially signing him to a long-term deal. Even with Xavier Howard, he said the door is not necessarily closed with Xavier Howard in his Miami Dolphins career. They could see Xavier Howard brought back to the team with him making less money than he was scheduled to make on his contract. But then, like I mentioned, he did talk about Jaylen Waddle, and he said, as things stand, there are no plans to trade Jaylen Waddle. So you take a look at that statement just unto itself, and there's a few different ways you can look at it. When you get into the months of February, March, April, leading up to the draft, take every single thing you hear from head coaches, from players, from GMs, from personnel in the team, from the equipment manager. Take it with an extreme grain of salt, because they're not going to come out and tell you that they are trying to trade a player, because that immediately brings down their value. They lose a lot of negotiating power by saying we are looking to trade a player. When teams know that you do not plan on keeping a player around, what you can then get for them is immediately cut, sometimes even in half. Look at Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields, probably if you just put him in a box, just like we're doing here with this Jaylen Waddle situation, take away the fact that the Bears are probably going to be selecting Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick. If you just say, what can you get for Justin Fields, for an athletic quarterback, young, still on his rookie deal, has yet to shine, but there's a lot of excuses that can be given his way as to why he's been not able to do so, you're probably looking at a first-round pick and more. Probably a first round and a third, first round pick and a fourth and a sixth, something in that nature for a young athletic guy that has shown promise, that has playmaking ability, has an uncertain future in this league, but you could probably get a decent haul for Justin Fields. But because teams now know that the Bears are likely going to use the first overall pick for Caleb Williams, then meaning Justin Fields is going to be off the team in some nature, you're going to have to find a trade partner. They now know that the Bears need to get him off the team and are not going to be able to get top dollar. So they're not going to bid against themselves. So the Bears are really looking at best to get a second round pick for Justin Fields. With Jaylen Waddle, Miami Dolphins would never come out and say, we are trying to trade Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle, same situation really with Justin Fields, but has already shown more promise. Young, on his rookie deal, came into the league the exact same year and has done nothing but produce back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons coming into the NFL. has had himself an incredible time with the Miami Dolphins. If I'm not mistaken, actually 1,000-yard seasons each of the first 3 years that he's been with the Miami Dolphins. Incredibly talented player, very versatile, can run a whole bunch of different routes, and his fit very well in his Mike McDaniel offense. Ability alone, the Miami Dolphins have no reason to trade Jaylen Waddle. However, with the money situation, unfortunately, you do have to let some guys go. We see that with the Cincinnati Bengals. They're trying their best to keep T. Higgins. And you look at T. Higgins, you look at Jaylen Waddle, very comparable. It's probably the best 1B/number 2 receivers in the NFL. Two teams that are looking to make a Super Bowl push, but two teams that already won with the Cincinnati Bengals and soon now with Miami Dolphins likely paying their quarterback over $50 million a year, have talented players across the roster, and just unfortunately can't pay everybody. It comes down to the point where you do have to let some guys walk. You do have to trade some guys that you don't want to. The fan base doesn't want to, but you have to do it to stay under the salary cap. With Jaylen Waddle here, do I think that's the case? Do I think the GM, do I think this team is just putting up a front to try to keep his price high and then eventually move him? No, I don't think that. I think the Miami Dolphins genuinely want to get Jaylen Waddle back onto the field next year and eventually, unfortunately, sign him to a long-term extension. I say unfortunately just because the money, and that's going to mean somebody else is going to have to walk. I think this team wants to keep Jaylen Waddle around. It's hard enough to draft players in this league and get production out of them. And you draft a player in the top 10 like they did with Jaylen Waddle, give up pieces to go up back into the top 10 after trading out of the top 10 to go get Jaylen Waddle. You have a player that's producing at a very important position, who is as young as he is as talented as he is. You cannot let that go out of the organization. You need to keep him there. The chemistry he's had with Tua is fantastic. And eventually, Tyreek Hill is not going to be in the picture forever. Whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whenever that may be, eventually Tyreek Hill is not going to be on this team because of age. When his contract is up after the 4-year deal that he signed with the Miami Dolphins, and you have Jaylen Waddle, who is almost a younger version of him. They definitely are not the same exact player, but do similar things very well. You have Jaylen Waddle, who's going to be in the mid to late 20s, when you're going to have Tyreek Hill at the end of his contract, I believe, be 33 years old. You'd much rather keep Jaylen Waddle, who still has plenty of years that he's going to be a fruitful wide receiver throughout the rest of his career, where Tyreek Hill will be coming towards the downslope of his career, and you're not going to see him have much better seasons than what he's having currently. Jaylen Waddle, he has a lot of room still to grow. He's a lot of room to be the incredibly talented receiver we know he can be. The receiver that we saw limited this year with Tyreek Hill being in front of him, limited this year with the injuries that he sustained. But I would not in any means want to see Jaylen Waddle off this team. I say any means, but the only means would be if you then get a player of Jaylen Waddle's caliber in return. Last year, we kind of scoffed at the idea of getting Jonathan Taylor back for Jaylen Waddle. However, now, if you ask me who I'd rather have in this Miami Dolphins offense, I think I'd slightly give the nod to Jonathan Taylor, somebody who can be a workhorse running back that can do everything on the field instead of having multiple guys try to make up that workhorse guy amongst 3 different players that the Miami Dolphins, we've seen them do in the past couple of years. I'd like to get that number 1 dominant workhorse back, just like we mentioned in the video on Monday. And we will be talking more about those individual running backs: Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler. I believe we'll have a own respective video for each of those 5 guys, breaking down some of the traits that we like about those guys, some of the negatives that we don't like about those guys. But if I'm moving Waddle, it has to be getting either a haul of picks, substantial picks that you can then go build out the rest of the team, or a player currently already in the league that fulfills a need that the Miami Dolphins currently have, which that's going to be very difficult, as if you're doing that, if you're getting a player like we potentially could, you're probably getting a very similar situation. You're probably getting a guy who's in their 3rd, 4th, or 5th years, who's at the end of their rookie deal, that you're then going to have to sign, like we brought in Bradley Chubb. We gave up a 1st-round pick, but then we also immediately had to sign him to a $20 million+ contract. So you're not really alleviating the money if you bring in a player, because you're just going to have to pay him just like you would for Jaylen Waddle. I would not like to see Jaylen Waddle leave this team. I would love to see how he can continue to grow hopefully get back on the right track when it comes to his injuries, and we hopefully see him have a healthy season. That's what I would like, and it looks like, just based off what the Miami Dolphins said, again, take it with a grain of salt, because we can't trust even our own guys this time of the year. There's always some scheming going on behind the scenes. They're trying to get something to happen, trying to get some deals, trying to get some bargains, so they're not going to be completely 100% honest with you. But just based off of word of mouth, what we heard from the Miami Dolphins, it looks like Chris Greer wants to hold on to the Dolphins. The Dolphins plan on having Jaylen Waddle on this team for a long time for the foreseen future. So let me know down below in the comments, what do you think of this Jaylen Waddle situation? Would you like to see him kept on the team? Would you like to see him get an extension this offseason? Would you like to see him moved on for picks, for other assets? Let me know all of your thoughts down below, as well as other players or other situations you'd like to see us cover here over on Miami Dolphins Syndicate. At the offseason, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot that we're already planning on talk about. But let me know if you have any specific ideas that you'd like to hear from us down below in the comments. While down there, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins.